Okay, I've got some sound here. This is for BISS 1123, the ground-based portion of the class that meets on 6 to 9 p.m. Now, I want to say something, and I assume all of you are going to be listening to this or looking at this. I want to make this clear. 6 o'clock till 7:30 is the ground-based portion of this course. My expectation is you will be in class. If not, I want a good reason why you wouldn't be in class. Now, if something happens, I give you the luxury of looking at the video by noon for it to count as attendance. Last night, we had maybe half a dozen students. Folks, you're required to be here. I will count absences, and that can end up in a problem for you. But I expect you to be in class. I've divided it up, and we go from 6 to 7:30 for a very simple reason. I do it so that I can give you the same situation that my other classes have, so that you have a ground-based and a virtual part of the course. So a part 2 is always that virtual portion. But I expect you to be in class. When I look up and there's 6 of us or 7 of us, that's no good. Okay? Now, I understand it's an evening time, but I also understand this. I keep you from 6 till 7:30 so that we do the 75 minutes seat time, and then then I have another 75 minutes for you in terms of virtual time. It works out the same way for all my classes doing this hybrid format. But I have to tell you this. If I see another evening like I did last night, the 14th of February, well, I have maybe 6 of us in class, I'm going to stop the cohort model for this, and I'll just simply take attendance with you being there at 6 o'clock or not. And we can go till 9 o'clock. I've tried to provide you an advantage, and you're taking advantage of it. So you need to be in class. That's all there is to it. You're enrolled in the course. You understand that it's a 3-hour course. Out of that 180 minutes, you should have 150 minutes of instruction. I think I've done everything I can do to make this course as student and athlete friendly as I possibly can. But last night was not good. If you're not in class at 6 o'clock on Thursday nights, I want to know why. There better be a good reason you're not there. I think I made myself clear. Okay, now we come to point number 2. Following the type of week it's been, the recording that I made last night was of such bad quality, I guess because of the internet trunk connection or something, that I can't use it. So I'm redoing last night's lecture. Now I could easily say, I was there at class, I went through the material. If you didn't show up, that's your problem. See, that's how we do it if we weren't recording them. If I wasn't recording these sessions, and I could just simply say, you'll have to talk to your neighbor. So when you're not there, I could just simply say, I'm under no obligation to redo a recording so that you can see what you missed. You should have been in class. If you weren't in class, why were you not in class? I get an email every week that tells me what athletic events are going on. I can check those names. Last night, I gave the lecture. It seemed to be working. I went to process the recording and it didn't. So I'm going to do this over. So I'm going to take another hour and 15 minutes or so of my life and redo this. Because I care enough about you and about you learning this material as I possibly could. Okay. So I'm going to cover chapters 4 and 5, the lunches database from the Patrick text. I'm going to go over here and I want to show you the textbook. And I think I've got, here it is. This is the textbook. Now, if you are in class in the ground-based portion, you should have the textbook with you. You really don't get the full benefit of what we're doing and trying to learn if you don't have the text with you. You just have to. It's the same in the virtual portion of the course. You need to have the textbook open and with you as you go through a video. You just won't get the benefit. Now, you can buy the book from Amazon. They've got some left. You can always buy the Kindle edition. And see the book online. Have it in your machine. It matters not to me, but what matters to me is that you have the textbook with you. So as we follow through, I mentioned, see, here's what he's doing in this case, or the figures in the textbook, or here's what he's doing in this situation, etc. So that you get the best, you get the best information. You see the whole thing as it works. I can assure you that it's worth your time to do these workshops because you get credit for doing them, number one. And number two, we cover especially in terms of developing query, we cover material that you're going to have to be able to do later on. You can go down into the course later in the course and you'll find you're going to have an exercise where you're going to take the check your understanding items from a series of chapters and you're going to write code. If you haven't been paying attention and following along, you're going to be as lost as a goose in a rainstorm. All right, let's go ahead. As I mentioned, we've been working ahead, and tonight we're going to look at, or what we looked at last night was Lunch's database 4. Okay. Now, in order to do that, and you have these 3 assignments, we've already covered them. And you can go into the files area and find what to upload for them. I will show you once more. And if you scroll down, you're going to see the Access Workshop. And I show you here the uploads for the 4 Access workshops. Here's what you upload. The data warehouse file in the Rockoff zip file. The fact cells, and this is in the file section of Canvas. Then the fact cells that export, where we exported a query into Excel, and then a geographic cells where we took another access file that was based on geography or location, and that's in the files section of Canvas. And then the Access Workshop 4, which is the sales database, and that's in the files section of Canvas. So these are the 4 uploads. These are the files you need to upload for Access 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'll close that off. Now, we're going to work on, we've worked on Lunch's database number 1. We've worked on Lunch's database number 2 and on number 3. And now we're going to take a look at Access Workshop 4 and 5. So I'm going to go down to the modules, and there's the Lunch's database 1, and that's the access file where we work the problems from 1, and those are based on page 23 through 30 of the Patrick text. Then Lunch's database 2. So I'm showing you what to upload, and I go through those in class and explain them in conjunction with the textbook. And then Lunch's database 3. And then the next week, Lunch's database 4. And you can see we're moving ahead, and we're front loading everything, so that when we get down near the course, you can use the flex time to do those projects I have and get ready for the final. Okay? So this week, we're going to take a look at 4 and 5. All right? Now, before we do that, I want to mention we have resources here they're also here in the website, here in the Canvas room. The first one, and I'll show you, I'm going to go to my desktop, are the Patrick materials. That has all of the code. In fact, if you open up that zip file, what you'll see is there's a zip file with the code for each chapter, and then SQL Fun, which is your data warehouse, okay? And it has the tables that we use to run code, that we'll use to generate code to run queries on this database. There's SQL Fun. There's the Patrick materials, okay? And this is a data warehouse. And you can see we've got all the access objects. And you can see all these queries, that all of these that are here. We've got tables, and then it's going to take us to the queries. I'll just show you the queries. And then forms, and you can see where I've worked through up to chapter 3. So, and you could use the same thing over and over, because the tables are what we're running the queries on, and the tables are all here, okay? So that's what we're going to be working with. Now, just for convenience sake, I'm going to go ahead and use what's already on my desktop. I could do that, but I want to open up this key. This is an access file that covers 4, and we're going to talk about chapter 4, or the lunches database 4. And I'm going to download this, okay? And I'm in Chrome, and I'm going to show it in my folder, and I'm going to put it here on my desktop. Okay. And so I have lunches database 4. And I'm going to open it up. We'll walk through some of that. Now you'll need to save yours to your desktop, and then you'll want to rename it and then upload it into Canvas. All right. Now, if you take a look at chapter 4, chapter 4 starts over on page 133. Okay? That's why I say you need to have the textbook with you as we go through these, because what I will often do is I will just show you the text, because they'll show us the code, they'll show us a beginning table and an ending table, or a series of things that we do. And often the author will have us walk through really a series of steps. Now, if you look at page 134, which is really just a summary of chapter 4, you're going to see the main thrusts of what we're doing. Saving a table, modifying the data in a table, okay, with SQL, modifying the data using a graphic user interface, and then restrictions on modifying data in a table. Now, this chapter is really a chapter that you should approach it with this mindset. I want to understand how the table is made, because the table has all the data I need to make my business decisions. Eventually, I'm going to query that data. I'm going to pull it out of the data warehouse, and I'm going to create I'm going to run a query, and I'm going to take a look at that data and the results set and try to see what pattern or what answer it's giving me, okay? Now, as you roll along with this, you're also going to want to you'll also need to use the Patrick materials, and you're going to need to use the code for chapter 4. And so we're going to open that up, okay? And this has code for specific chapters. And so I'm going to open up this code for chapter 4. That's what we're working on. And he's going to walk us through section by section, okay? Now here's a good example of what I was talking about. Here's 4.1, okay? And he's got creating a table, okay? Using a modified select statement. This is near the bottom of page 137. Now, let's go ahead and run the code. So I'm going to select it. And I'm going to come into the database. And I'm going to click Create, Query Design, and then I'm going to close that off. And I'm going to go to the SQL view, and I'm going to paste in the select statement, the code. Now let's think about this for a minute, and you can either see it. One of the reasons I encourage you to follow through the book as we go through this is so that you can see the code, the beginning table over on page 138, and the new table that's created, that's on page 138 as well. So you see the before and the after and how we got there, okay? This modified statement here's what it's saying. We're going to select the employee ID, the first name, the last name, and the department code from the employees table. And we're going to insert them into section 0401 sales staff. And the data that will be inserted, or the records, are those where the department code is sales, S-A-L. So I'm going to look at the data sheet view, and there it is. Now, if you want to check that you've done it correctly, you can take a look at the middle of page 138, and you'll see it. So this is 4.1. Okay, so we've created a table, and they ask us to save it, and they tell us we're going to name the table 0401 sales staff. And that's at the top of page 137. So we're going to name it section 0401, and then we're going to have an underscore, and then we'll have sales, another underscore, and staff. And we're going to save it as such. Now, because I've been working through this and teaching the course, it's telling me you've given this query the same name as an existing table in your database. If you see that, click OK. Okay, it says you can't give the query the same name. All right, let's do this. I'm going to modify this, and I'm going to put Harmon. You could use your last name, SP 19, meaning spring 19. Okay, there we go. Now, as we go through and run any additional code, if they ask us to execute some more code off of that table, we'll need to remember what we've named this thing. But that's okay. So we've created a table using a query. Okay. Now I want to show us the ribbons. Okay. And so we're good to go. So we've done that very first one. We created, and we used the select statement. Again, I want to make sure that you understand. If you look at that modified SQL statement, there in the middle of page 137, that is 4.1. That's the code. Notice what we're doing. We're selecting some fields: employee ID, first name, last name, department code. Okay, and we're getting them from the employees table. And we use the where statement where the department code equals sales, SAL, and we use a literal there. We put a parenthesis, then SAL, then a parenthesis, and then, of course, the semicolon means I'm through running the query. Now we got that data. Now the other issue that you have here is some redundancy. And I have this thing named sales staff. Okay, great. And I might want to go ahead and well, it says sales staff. So the title of this telegraphs to the end user, well, who are these people and what department are they in? So I'm going to go back into the design view, all right? And I'm going to suppress that department code. And then we'll go back up to the data sheet view. And we see the names. What I'm saying is the title of the query, now we've saved as a table, all right? It's also called a view. It's there. And we have, with the title, telegraphs what we have. Now let's scroll down here and we'll close this for a second. Okay? I want to save those changes, and we'll go down here and see if we can find that table. And we'll just use the shutter filter for section 0401. There's the sales staff that we'd already done. You know, I'm working through this database. I've done some of this already. And we should have, well, there's the table for the sales staff. And I'll bet you it's shown up as a query. Nonetheless, it's a view, and there it is. Now, I want you to notice something about this. Look at the icon. you'll see this and you'll see that, that the icon indicates that we've created a table. That's what the little exclamation point there is showing you, that you've created the table. That's all that's going on. Okay. Now, over on pages 140 and 141, they show you how to save the results in a query. We've done that, all right? And then over on page 142 and 143, the authors go through some important narrative in the text, talking about the differences between tables and views, and they walk you and they give you a nice summary of that. All right. And we use the insert statement to create this. Now, over on page 144, the authors talk about deleting a table or deleting a view. And that's simple in Access. The GUI, the graphic user interface, if I wanted to, I can just click delete and I'm done. I could also copy it. I don't have to run the code because I have a graphic user interface. That's all there is to it. That's all they're telling you there. And then over in 146 to 147, they talk about the fact that you can build one view on top of another. And that's really a process where you run a query, you save it, it's now a view. You run a second query on the first one. You run a third query on the results of 1 and 2, and you can run, and you just keep running queries on them. And that layers the data. You say, what do you mean? Well, if you go over to page and I'll see it where it's really dramatic. If you go over to pages 152 and 153 of the text, all right, you're going to see where they make changes in that table. They're inserting some data. And so they just layer things. That's why that where clause is so important. The two key pieces of this are right here, and I'm going to show you. We'll go down to the SQL view. And notice something. I want you to take a look here real carefully. All right. When we went to design view on this query, notice that up here it says it's a make table, and there's the icon. Okay? There's the icon. Now, we're going to go back to the SQL view. And we just keep extracting data using the where statement, typically, to get that first cut or to lay that first layer, second layer, third layer, etc. And that's really what the authors are conveying to us. That's over there in the middle of page 152, putting data in all the columns, putting data only in only some columns. This is what they talk about in 152. Look, here's the deal. All right, this is nice for you to know, and it's good for you to know. However, 99.9% of the time, data that are inputted to be included in a table, which is about 99.99 thousandth bits of data. Well, all data ought to be in a table. Okay. You can input the data by controlling the input mechanism. You could have a form. We saw those back in 1123, and we'll see these again, that constricts how the user can enter data and what data get entered to what table. If you're talking about that could be your e-commerce store. When you go to Amazon and you shop, you're using a form that fills out your sales record in the table. It also does a query that does it does some online analytical processing where it figures your bill, that type of thing. When you swipe a credit card or you stick it in with a chip, the card reader basically takes all that data and puts it into a table. So we do have some ways, and it's nice for you to see how to make a table and to understand that the key thing that you need to know about a table is this: what data am I collecting? What type of table is this? Is it a table of constants where I have like I have a price and a name, stuff that won't change, like number sets and so forth, or a dimensional table that lists attributes or variables connected to transactions, connected to customers, suppliers, products, processes, and then a fact table, which is a record of transactions. Okay? So that's, in essence, what really chapter 4 is all about. The rest of it is running some code and showing you how you can do that. Now, inputting data into a table, most of the time, like I said, what we'll have to the best we can, to the greatest extent possible, we have a user input the data, a customer who comes and orders from our site, a customer who fills out registers with himself, a supplier with whom we share an e-commerce store as a back office operation so we can order stuff from them. We really try more and more to stop the process whereby you have people inputting data where we could have the customer or a key stakeholder input the data and then it just arrives in the table that we have. Now, if you go online and if you buy a car, if you buy a house, if you anything like that, you're probably going to interact with a human being who will input some data for you, who will ask you questions and they'll be inputting data. Or they may ask for, the data they ask for may be pre-prepared. For example, if you get your taxes done at Quicken or any of those tax services that are online, they're going to ask you for copies of electronic copies of your documents, your W-2, 1099s, all that stuff. Okay, it's the same thing if you buy a house. So when in doubt, make sure that you ask for what you want, no more, that you automate it as much as possible, and that you're very careful before you do put in any additional data, anything of that sort. Okay? Let me give you a really good example of this. I'm going to diminish this down, and we're going to go out here on the internet, open up a new tab. Okay, and I'm going to go to Zillow. Okay, now this is a real estate database, basically. Notice that this is a form. Now notice that they know all about me because I've used them. I look at them all the time. I look at houses just to see what the comps are in my neighborhood. I look for houses that have certain characteristics that are interesting to me just to see them. My wife and I are real estate buffs. We love to look at houses. And so this is a fun way to do it. And just to see what's going on in my neighborhood. As you could see, this is a form where I'm being asked to input data. Now, it recognizes me and my email, and I have an account. And notice this little, to create your account, Google will share your name, email, and address. I'm reading this little blurb right here, and profile picture with Zillow. By continuing, you agree to follow Zillow, you agree to Zillow's privacy policy and terms of service. Now, what they've said is, if you want to use the service and you register with us, we're going to share your data. Okay? Now, this is a nice thing. I pop it on there and they say, "Hi, Keith. This is my Google account. Glad to have you back." So now they have a table where they keep all of my searches. So if they want, they can sell that data and say, he's living in this house at this this dollar value in this neighborhood. He's looking at these other houses. Is he looking to upscale? Or if he's looking at some other houses in other zip codes, is he looking to downscale? Here's an agent finder. So this is what I've been talking about. This is really nothing more than a database. So let's go back. I'm going to diminish that. I will back up here to the file, the access file, and we've done that first step. Now, you see, you're doing a whole lot more lecturing than you are just simply running code. Well, there's a reason. If you follow along in the book, you can see the code that's run. You can see the beginning table and the ending table, just like you do at page 152. Okay? And then 153 shows you the beginning table and then the table after the changes. Now they show you method 1 and method 2, running a query, running an insert statement, running a query to insert data in all the columns or putting data in only some columns. Now, this is fine because technically the authors ought to show you this, but this brings you back to something you'll hear me say many times. If there's a table, it should contain only the data that you need, no less, no more. And the insertion, the additional records to a table ought to be controlled by two people. The end user, who might come to update data like, here's my new address, here's my new phone number, or somebody authorized by the organization you work who has the authority to go in and change that table. When you hear them use the term legacy data, they're talking about the data in those tables. And you don't want to change that stuff. You just don't. Especially if it's financial records. You have to keep it for a certain period of time to be in compliance with state and federal laws and generally accepted accounting principles and all that. Okay? So we talk about modifying data in a table that's SQL, and you say, well, okay, well, Dr. Harmon, you keep harping on using forms and all that business. Then why go through this? Well, I want you to be able to see what we're doing. Now, if you come down to the bottom of page 155, you're going to see the Oracle SQL methods for putting data in only some columns. All right? No good, no good, no good. Now, the middle of page 157, changing the data in the rows already in a table. This is an update query, okay? I'm going to close this off. And they give us the syntax, the basic structure of an update query. It says update table name, set column 1 equals value 1, column 2 equals value 2, where, and then the conditions. So that's the structure or the syntax. You'll notice there they talk about expressions, which are mathematical operations. And there in page 158, you're going to see query 411. So I'm going to go into the notepad and I'm going to scroll down to query to 411. And we're going to update a table. Okay? Now, let's look at what I've highlighted for just a moment. I'm going to update the 0411 foods table. I'm going to set the price to equal the price plus 10% or 10 cents. And that's an expression. It's a mathematical operation. The price increase will equal the price increase plus 10 cents, 0.10, where the supplier ID is JBR and FRV. That N, this means search for. I'll highlight it right here. This means search for, and so it's going to search that table, and everywhere it sees those suppliers and these literals that we've added, JBR and FRV, it's going to update the prices. Okay? So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to click Create. And I'm going to go to Query Design. I'll close this off. And I'll go down to the SQL view. And I'm going to run the query. It says you're about to update 4 rows. Okay. And we do. Now we can go to the view. And we'll see here are the changes that we've made, a price and a price increase. Now, the benefit of having the textbook is this, and following through the text. This is going to be 411. We'll call it that, 4-11. Okay. The beauty of it is, okay, well, yeah. I'll call it 4-11 Harmon SP19. Okay, I've got it saved. The benefit is this: I can come down here in the bottom of page 158 and I can see the table. I don't have to go scrolling through here to look for the result sets. I see the beginning table and the ending table. And I think it's important for you to see the two of them so you can see where the changes occurred. And they give you some notes there on the bottom of page 150. On 158, they show you the foods, the table 0411 foods after the change, and then it has some notes there up at the top of 159 that explain what happened. Okay? This just shows us, okay, what the price and the price increase. We didn't include the other data. We could if we wanted to, but we just didn't. So we can save that and close it off. And they, at the bottom 158, will let you check that to see what indeed happened. So you updated. Let's go to design view on this again. And I want you to notice something, okay? And let's go down here to the query SQL view. Oh no, I'm sorry. Let's open up this one. The one in here, Harmon 411. Now notice, this is the one we just did, the Harmon 411. 411 Harmon Spring 19. It can be your last name, but notice up here in the ribbon, notice that it gives us an indication that we've just run an update query. Okay, so we get some visual feedback. That's all I wanted to show you there. And we'll close them both. They talk about deleting rows from a table, which they run a query there at the top of 160 to delete that, to delete some rows. And what they're going to do is, in the section 0412 foods table, what they're saying is, anytime you find a supplier ID called CBC or JVR, eliminate that record. Okay? Now, all I can say to you is, I frankly doubt that you will ever want or have the power to delete records. Do so with great trepidation, because once you delete them, they're gone. So archival data, keep it. Legacy data, keep it. You never know when you may need it. Over on page 161, they talk about using the graphic user interface to modify data in a table. They show you Oracle. Okay. And of course, they show you then how it's done in Access GUI. And then putting constraints on modifying the data in the table. They show you a query that won't run because it violates a constraint. And you say, okay, what about constraints? What are we talking about for sure? Let's get some clarity on that. So we're going to go to the tables here, okay? And I'm going to come down to the departments table, and I'm going to open it up in design code. All right, now we have the department code that has to be there. The department name, is the department code required? Yes, no duplicates. Is the department name required? Well, we don't require it, but it's kind of stupid. So in the departments table, we ought to require the data. Now, this is a table that uses, this is a dimension table, okay? And it's also called a slowly changing table because it's not going to be that often that you'll add a new department or eliminate a department. So it's not going to be changed that much. But if you're going to have the department name in there, you might as well require it. And so one of the constraints would be just simply to say, yes, it's required. Zero length, no. And away you go. Now, the code at the top of page 168, I'm going to close this off here. And let's go back down into the code. And this violates a constraint. And I'm going to find that update query where update the employees. Here it is. Now, this is the code that's in the Oracle and Access SQL on page 168. You run the query and it gives you an error, okay? Because it's violating a constraint. And it deals with the phone numbers. And let's just run it and see what the error message that we get. They tell us that in the book, but hey, let's just do this. So we'll click create, query design. And we'll run it. It says you can't access all the records. They have a conversion failure. They all have to have a unique phone number. That's all it's about. There's some security restrictions. They talk about that. So that pretty much does chapter 4, okay, in terms of working with the data. Now, over in chapter 5, they talk about the data dictionary. Now, we'll go back to the Patrick materials, and he has access code for chapter 5. All right? And he has some examples, a series of steps. He spends some time talking about the data dictionary in Oracle, modifying data through a view. All right, if you'll take a look at page 181, you're going to see what I've been talking about in terms of a view. Notice that they show this figure where you see the view based on the table. The data in the underlying table can be changed by reaching through this view, okay? But otherwise, you're just seeing the view. And you can run an update query, but you get a view. And it's just simply doing updates. Page 182 walks you through the beginning table, a new table, change the data, which gives you an ending view, and then a new ending table. 5.5 walks you through a series of steps. This is at the bottom of page 183. And they tell us to delete the saved query shipping department view if it exists. All right. This is 5.5. And we're going to run 5.5 example step 1. Well, that's Oracle, okay? And then let's see, let's walk this through because I want us to run the Access versus the Oracle. Let's see, step 2. That's the Oracle. Yep. Again, modifying the data, you want to be careful about it. Now, this is 5.5 example 2, and they've got the select query, and I'm going to find it here because I want to make sure we don't run the wrong query. For 5 employees, department equals, okay. This is that code at the bottom of page 183. We're going to copy this. We may get an error or something. We may not have created the table when we needed to, who knows. Okay. We're going to create. And query design. And we go to the SQL view. And we'll run it. Okay. And they ask us to save it as the shipping department view. Now, if you look over on page 185 at the top of it, you'll see the beginning view. You just have to squinch these out a little bit. I'm just going to save this. And then close it off. The author walks you through these series of steps to update data and insert data, etc. As I've said before, it's nice for you to see the code and how this is done, but for all intents and purposes, that's why you have a form, or you have a form that the end user fills out, or your employee fills out their employment information, their address and all that stuff. Okay? So there's a lot of repetitive work in this chapter, and they talk about the data dictionary. Okay? Now, they walk you through all these processes of how to get the definition the data dictionary in SQL, but they say, okay, you can do it using the GUI there in Access. So it looks like they've got, let's go to the employees table and we'll open it up and we'll see. We're going to go to design view. Now, let me say this. In the commercial products that exist today, okay, there are, for database administrators, they have this type of graphic user interface access. They don't, graphic user interface. They don't have to write a bunch of They don't have to write a bunch of queries for constraints. They can come into a menu-driven environment like this is and just simply make those restrictions. Let's look at the phone number. And there are some things here that, is it required? No. Well, is there any kind of constraint on this? Yes. If you look there, allow zero ink, yes. But if you come down and you say it's indexed, no duplicates. So there's a constraint. We'd seen that earlier in a query. No employee, each employee has to have a unique phone number. This would be the same if they had the Social Security number. Those would all have to be unique. Same thing with an employee number. So that's an example of a constraint that they show you there. And I talk about how to find the primary key in a table and access. And in most commercial products now, for the database administrator, not for you and I, the end user or decision maker, there will be an icon that, like the key that shows them that's the primary key for that table. So there's really not much there, in chapter 5 for you to see. And they give you a lot of points about Oracle, its commands page. It really focuses more on Oracle. So there's just not too much there. Most constraints are designed to prevent duplicate records or anomalous records, like 2 employees sharing the same phone number, or 2 employees sharing the same employee ID, or 2 employees sharing the same Social Security number. That type of anomaly, you eliminate using the constraints. You can also use constraints in terms of, let's look at hire date. Okay, click on that for a moment. And you can create a validation rule that requires you can make that required by just simply making it yes, so that you have their hire date. That's a constraint. You can have a validation rule that states, anybody who says they were hired before 2015 it's bogus because we started operating in 2015. That type of thing. That's really what's going on. That's what it's all about. And you can come into the GUI and make those changes. So there's not that much in chapter 5, most of which you've not already seen. But as you've seen me note, most of it's down here in terms of ensuring that things are required or indexed. The hire date is not required. You could make it required. You just simply would check yes. I don't know why you wouldn't require it. To me, it's nonsensical, so you just change it. You could write some code to do that, but you don't really need to. Another thing that's important about the data dictionary, okay? It should explain the following. If it's not obvious about, okay, this is the employee ID, that's obvious. Then at the very least, you want to know who created that constraint, who made it a primary key, the date when that occurred. So if a DBA leaves, or they or they for some reason there's a record there of how it got created, or in those situations where we define credit limit. What do we mean by that? And when did we decide on it? And who signed off? And the date. That should be filled up. And when it says optional over there, out in the real world, that's not optional. You want to have all of that information in there because you want to be able to open this thing up and look at it and go, okay, that's what we're here. Because there's going to be those times in your career, especially if you own your own firm or you work at a higher level of the firm, where you'll be involved in designing a table or modifying a table. Now, they'll probably say, we have some legacy data in this table. So here's our basic table structure. What do you want? And so you should understand the constraints that you want to make sure are there, et cetera. And you want to make sure that all gets documented. That's what that's over there for. Okay? Well, that's pretty much it for Chapter 5. As I told you, we blow through it pretty fast. It's more conceptual material than coding. All right? And most of the coding exercises that they have you do is stuff you could do in the GUI and are tasks that you won't perform. But you do have to understand as a decision maker and as a tech savvy manager, somebody that the IT people will communicate with, and you can communicate with them, and you always want them to be your friends, okay? Then you'll understand about constraints, how we handle them, and why we would have them there. Okay, folks, that's gonna do it. And again, my apologies. Last night, I thought things were running smoothly with my recording. I went to process the recording, and it was an unmitigated disaster. So this is in place of the lecture. Now, if you're there and you heard the lecture, fantastic. But you'd say, well, yes, this substitutes for that lecture. Now, I will do a part 2 this weekend or early next week prior to this class so you can see, so you'll get that full 150 minutes. Thank you so very much, and I will see all of you online, hopefully on Tuesday. Pardon me, I will see all of you in class next Thursday night, and away we go.